a legal framework, it would be very important that we enact one that provides a legal framework on how we manage projects. Weak coordination among government agencies. Honorable Prime Minister, despite the financial 22-23 being the third year of implementing NDP, many government institutions continue to operate in silos with little coordination or interaction, which leads to competition of resources, duplication of human and financial efforts, and conflict among agencies due to overlapping mandates. For instance, using funding from different sources, government implemented 4 different systems for management of local revenue collection in different urban centers. Many MDAs have operating data centers, yet government of Uganda invested in the national cloud, which is our data center. We call upon the office of the Prime Minister to coordinate agencies so that we don't lose resources. Parish development model. We have worked to applaud you, Honorable Prime Minister, and your government, especially Minister of Finance, for delaying the full implementation of parish development model, because we know resources are going to get wasted. A small rapid assessment revealed that parish development committees were not yet prepared to receive the funds, negative mindset about PDM in the communities. In fact, most people refer to PDM money as appreciation from government. Lack of beneficiary involvement in the selection of PDM commodities, and many others, Honorable Prime Minister. We look forward to ensure that government fully addresses some of these problems, especially ensuring that the only data we can use comes from Uganda Bureau of Statistics. This could be the only source of information that we can rely on. But also invest in undertaking a well-coordinated citizen awareness program, and also ensure that ministries and agencies at the national level are well coordinated. I would like to invite my colleague to finish the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Binomu Chaatha. I'm the Executive Director of ACCORD and a member of the Budget Transparency Initiative. My colleague, I just want to add one small point on the parish development model. We think that actually beyond what it is, it would be important to involve civil society at every level to promote transparency and accountability there, but also to help government in the mindset change, because this is a big undertaking. But also on the mindset change, we think it does not have to take place at the parish level or local government, but also at the national level, because some of us at the national level also need to shift in the mindset to be able to implement a successful program, which we think is novel and could lift this country out of poverty, especially the 39% of our people who are outside the money economy. I would add another point, Right Honorable Prime Minister, and that has to do with inadequate fiscal transfers to the local governments. Local governments up to now still receive underfinancing. So we think that within the framework of centralization, government needs to prioritize proper financing of local government so that they can implement their mandate. But beyond that, we propose discretionary funding, because most of the money that goes to local government is conditional financing, which ties these local governments, because within the decentralization policy, local governments are supposed to be the main planning areas. But when you plan for them from the center, so you deny them that planning function because they are closer to the people and they are closer to the challenges that face the people than the center. The other point, Right Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and Government, indeed, is the induction of the local government councils generally. You know that since elections, we have a new set, and you know the attrition rate of people who come back, 80% of the people are new only 20% came back. But these people have not been inducted because there is no money. That's what, of course, Minister of Local Government have been told. But imagine people who are clueless about the roles and functions of local governments now receiving government billions of money to provide oversight, to monitor their implementation. What are they going to do? No wonder Chitugum, Guru, and Kabale, they sat down and shared the past government model money, thinking they were doing a good job. The other issue, Right Honorable Prime Minister, has to do with food insecurity in the country. Food insecurity drives inflation in this country. I want to commend government for the efforts in Karamoja, and in a special way to appreciate you, Right Honorable Prime Minister. We have seen you, we have seen government responding to Karamoja. But it is, but I think rather than reacting to these situations, which are going actually to increase, government should seriously set up food reserves, silos, so that when there is food insecurity in one part of the country, we can easily, countries like the US, I see the US mission director here, countries like the US, they have food reserves that can last them for about 15 years, even if they didn't grow food. What's wrong with us stockpiling our food and securing our food? And I want to implore you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, that food security is national security. Because countries could use actually food as a political weapon. The other issue is slow progress on rationalization process. We want to appreciate government realization and effort at rationalizing, merging the MDAs. But I think since 2018 up to now, the process is slow and a lot of money is being wasted. There is lack of coordination within government. So, Right Honorable Prime Minister, as a civil society, we humbly request that the OPM, Office of the Prime Minister, designs a roadmap on when we can start this process, beginning with those agencies that are easy to merge or rationalize, because we call these low-hanging fruit. So if the civil society commits to support government in designing this roadmap so that we can quickly reduce on the government expenditure and actually save money to reignite our economy quickly. The final point, Right Honorable Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, has to do with climate change financing. Uganda is a nature-based economy. We have a comparative advantage in the agricultural sector where we can produce without a lot of investment. But because of climate change, the way we have degraded the environment, poor farming systems, less investment in this sector. Now climate change has come, and last year we experienced the drought. That's climate change. We've seen crises in Bududa, and this is a wake-up call. I think we shouldn't wait for the situation of Pakistan where a country could be brought to its knees. So what are we recommending? We think that the government should prioritize investment in climate change. There is a climate change law, and it creates a fund. So we recommend that the government operationalizes climate fund and operationalizes it very quickly. And hand in hand with this is also to provide irrigation services to the citizens, because this country can no longer afford to depend on rain-fed agriculture since climate conditions have changed. In conclusion, the final point has to do with the extractive industries transparency initiative. We want to commend the government of Uganda for signing up and being admitted on the extractive industries transparency initiative, which was done in August 2020. This is a fundamental achievement by the government of the Republic of Uganda to make transparency in the management of our natural resources. But while the government has signed, the secretariat is not funded. Right Honorable Prime Minister would humbly request that government shows commitment by funding that secretariat, so that it doesn't have to go on to civil society, request for money here and there. I think we can finance it, because once you have, once you manage the extractive sector, we are likely to actually to generate more resources that we can use for development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Another big hand clap. So let us now get another presenter. The private sector joint proposals on the budget strategy. I think the presenter is Madam Olive Chigongo. Oh, you are welcome. Is Stephen Asimu? Oh, you are welcome. Thereafter, we shall have Uganda Local Governments Association, ULUGA. The presenter will be preparing now. And after that, we shall have plenary. Thank you so much. Mr. Asimu, please.
Thank you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, Members of Parliament, Permanent Secretaries, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, MDs present, colleagues from the private sector and the media. I would like to request Madam Blessing Wombisha to come here. My name is Stephen Asimwe. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda, PSFU. I'm accompanied by Blessing, who is from the CEO of the Uganda National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We bring apologies from our institutional heads, PSFU's chairman, Dr. Erika Ruhanga, and the president of the Chamber of Commerce, Madam Olive Chigongo. So we'll speak on behalf of the private sector, Madam Right Honorable. We shall be quick. First of all, we want to thank the Ministry of Finance, and specifically the Minister and the PSST, who a couple of weeks ago engaged us in a dialogue where the Ministry of Finance requested us to give preliminary information towards this document. Honorable Minister of Finance, you typically removed almost 90% of what I was going to present, and I would like to commend you for that, for using that information. Right Honorable Prime Minister, I would like also to thank Ministry of Finance once again, that early this year, from about January after the opening of the economy, the private sector, which is a combination of ourselves and the Chamber of Commerce, did conduct a series of engagement with private sector across the country. And we did this so that we get views and positions. We did dialogues, we did seminars, and we were able to produce a paper which we presented to the Ministry of Finance. And I would like to take this opportunity to commend the ministry that 74% of the things we suggested were included in this year's budget. So we thank you very much, and I think you deserve a big hand clap for that. In that context, therefore, Right Honorable Prime Minister and members present, I'm going to abridge this document because most of the things have been covered, but just for emphasis that the private sector has had a very long engagement towards contributing towards the budget process. Our private sector is dominated by micro, small, and medium enterprises, which comprise about 93% for every 100 business establishment. And micro enterprises comprise about 80 for every 100 business establishment. So in terms of the sector contribution to GDP, the projection is that services contribute about 41.5%, agriculture 24%, industry 26%, according to this year's budget. Now, I don't want to go into the details of the fact that the COVID-19 hit us the hardest, and then that was also compounded by the challenges of the war in Ukraine and Russia, and consequently, we have had a very, very tough time. But suffice to say that in spite of all of that, we've come out, and the issues that came out of that pandemic and of course the war effects have been highlighted by the minister, but probably for emphasis is the issue of low purchasing power, the narrow taxable base of course, which forces the government to create a multiplicity of taxes on a few members in comparison to the bigger numbers. Lack of appropriate capital, and I think the minister ably talked about it, especially for investments and operations. One of the things and the key themes we want to emphasize here, and this goes to the Right Honorable Prime Minister, is that through your office, would like to suggest that there's been a very slow enactment of business laws. And this has slowed down on a lot of the operating environment that is helping to sustain and grow the business compared to our neighbors in the region. We would like to commend Parliament at this point in time for passing the local content bill, and would like to request that they can, the Cabinet, through you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, accedes to the outcome of that document so that it will help. The Minister talked about the poor and slow implementation of government investment projects, and we think that more work needs to be done there, especially to address the issue of domestic areas, which I think you highlighted very, very ably. Now, going further, Uganda is a member of the East African Community. We are part of COMESA and recently the ACFTA. We still have challenges, Right Honorable Prime Minister, especially in the region in the context of non-tariff barriers. I would like to commend government on behalf of the private sector that in the last 7 months, government has facilitated the private sector working with other government agencies like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Export Promotions Board, the Bureau of Standards, Immigration, and of course trade and industry, agriculture, and others. In our experience in engaging with the regional players, we have found a lot of challenges on non-tariff barriers, and would like to, through your office, that a lot of emphasis is put at the East African Community especially, and of course our other neighbors who are around our area. Now, on issues on to do with, like I said, I'll just highlight areas of engagement. Our constituents have spoken and asked us to talk about the unprogressive tax regime. Yes, we recommend the URA and the Ministry of Finance for some of the policies. However, we want to encourage the government and to continue with element of not adding any new taxes, and we thank you for the not adding taxes in this last financial year, and so we feel that this should continue for another 3 years. Another area we want government to address is the issue of addressing financing constraints through requisite policies and establishing the de-risking mechanisms such as the risk guarantee schemes. We also want enforcement of local content policies and laws to reduce capital flight, to expand the markets for local producers, or BUBU for that matter, by using the budgeted resources to stimulate demand amongst the population. I've talked about the NTBs. I don't want to go too much in that one. The minister addressed the issue of high domestic borrowing and constrained fiscal space. I won't talk about that. The PPP was addressed. On the issue of innovation, technology development and transfer, I think the minister talked about it, but we feel that some revisions need to be done, especially on taxing some of the ICT sector areas, and this is provided for in our document. We feel, Right Honorable Prime Minister, on the PDM, the Parish Development Model, the need to include the digital space, especially for young people who form the bulk. We feel that it is still very expensive, internet is still very high, and that's a discussion we can have, and we recommend including the private sector to discuss on the issue of digital space. I'm trying to be very fast here. On ICT, Right Honorable Prime Minister, we want a bigger and open use of e-commerce platform. Our constituents are saying, please open up Facebook. The bulk of the pyramid at the bottom are young people, and they've been using Facebook, especially for marketing, startup companies, And I think it's time that this space is opened so that we can have more usage, especially for business. On agro-industrialization, Right Honorable Prime Minister, we want, and our members are suggesting that we develop horticultural export cold chains and expand them. The current ones at Entebbe are still small, and we request that government invests in value chain, and I thank the Minister for suggesting that they will put emphasis on areas that will open up bigger doors for us. On floriculture industry, Right Honorable Prime Minister, we have a strategic advantage on flowers. The challenge is still in terms of the infrastructure that is necessary to help augment exports of this area. Our neighbors have leapfrogged us on this. They employ more people and they're earning more money, but that's the discussion we have information on. My constituents, our constituents have said that there is need for government to prioritize in investing in veterinary drugs industries. We have a lot of influx of illicit veterinary drugs. We feel that the government needs to invest more in this area so that it can help us to fight counterfeits and manage that industry. I'll skip a lot of that. I'd like to put some emphasis on tourism. I know that the minister mentioned it, but we feel that government needs to invest more money in the marketing budget. My former station was CEO of the tourism board. I'm very familiar with this area. We feel that government needs to put more emphasis, more money in marketing, in MICE, on the brand. And this 194.7 billion shillings, yes, is good, but if you look at the component on marketing, it is still very small. Before 2019, tourism was earning Uganda $1.8 billion, which is about 10% of GDP. We feel that's an area that needs to be further supported. I'm concluding with lots of issues. Economic Recovery Fund, we talked about that. We want, Right Honorable Prime Minister, through you and Ministry of Finance, they need to put money in Uganda Air Cargo. In our recent trip to the DRC and South Sudan, the cost of freight by air was still very high. And yet the opportunities are immense, and we feel that that is an area that needs to be addressed. On digital tax stamps, we feel there's a need to reduce on the cost of stamps, and our manufacturers have a paper for that. I'm trying to move very, very quickly here. I've been given just about a minute or two. We need the government's intervention in the area of export guarantees and export insurance guarantees to be supported, especially in trade. And finally, Right Honorable Prime Minister, there's an area that has not been largely looked into, the area of sport, the area of entertainment, the area of the creative industry. That's a very, very powerful area. We've done benchmarking studies with our colleagues in West Africa. They are now hitting double-digit figures, and it's now being measured alongside GDP. And so we feel very strongly the need to put some more resources in the creative arts sector, and obviously to help in the financing and training of those. I have a very big document which is combined, and I would like to, at this point, because of time, say that we are very, very thankful to you and the ministry for according us this chance, and also for adopting most of the proposals that we have. Thank you very much, for God and my country.
Thank you so much. Another hand clap. Let's now get a presentation from my brother, Rwabuhinga, the LC5 of Kabarole, on behalf of Wulga. Richard Rwabuhinga, you are welcome. You have 20 minutes.
The Right Honorable Prime Minister and also Chair of this conference, the Honorable Ministers, Members of Parliament, Excellencies, the Ambassadors and Heads of Diplomatic Missions, the Head of Public Service and your Deputy, Permanent Secretaries, our partners, District Chairpersons and RDCs, civil society, members of the private sector, the media, and all of you distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Chair and members, on behalf of Uganda Local Governments Association, we are indeed honored for having been invited today at this National Budget Conference to present the local government specific issues that need to be given due consideration during the preparation of the budget for the financial year 2023-24 in order to improve service delivery to the people of Uganda. We commend the government of Uganda and the NRM government for the steps undertaken to address some of the critical challenges affecting socio-economic transformation and the economic recovery, including the monetary policy to control the overall money supply and promote the economic growth, while employing strategies such as revising central bank rates and changing bank reserve requirements for commercial banks. The implementation of the partial development model is yet another milestone which will help transform the economy through targeting the 3.5 million households still in subsistence economy, among others. Right Honorable Prime Minister, we equally appreciate the thrust of the budget strategy for the financial 23-24, which is premised on key program areas, including addressing security and good governance, climate change and management of food security, implementation of the partial development model, consolidating infrastructure development to reduce the cost of doing business, private sector development, tourism development, balanced regional development, global and regional geopolitical shocks on national economic growth, amongst others. However, as local governments of Uganda, we call upon government, and particularly the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, to ensure that the key prioritized areas for the national budget strategy for the financial year 23-24 truly reflect local government needs and are strongly driven by the revival towards strengthening the decentralized policy based on the devolution principle as enshrined in Chapter 11 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda and the Local Government Act Cap 243 as an anchor to achieve efficiency and effectiveness in service delivery to the people of Uganda. Right Honorable Chair, our unreserved expectations are aligned to the need for effective systems, processes, and resources, both human capital and financial, to enable us to effectively execute the respective mandates come financial year 2023-24. Therefore, Uganda Local Government Association key issues to the budget strategy are as follows. Number one is strengthen the capacity of security agencies in local governments and address peace, security, and stability. We applaud government and the strategy already outlined by the Honorable Minister of Finance in this area, because we believe that for us to thrive as local governments, we must operate from a stable and secure country. This has been ably expounded by the Honorable Minister of Finance. I will not dwell much on that. Honorable Chair 2 is climate change, environmental degradation, and management of food security in local governments. This needs to be allocated sufficient resources to facilitate the enforcement of the law on environmental degradation, enforcement on actions to mitigate and adapt to climate change, including promoting agro-industrialization, financing irrigation, particularly small-scale solar-powered irrigation, valley dams in the semi-arid areas of this country like Karamoja and the other sub-regions under this climatic condition. We believe that once this is achieved, it will boost food production and productive agriculture, which will help address the challenges of low economic activity, low productivity, food insecurity, and unemployment, among others. Honorable Chair, we call on government to invest more in the environmental offices and the environmental activities. It is true that most local governments have environmental officers in place, but not do they have transport or any other means that can enable them effectively reach the population on means of sensitizing them, on the mission of sensitizing them, but also on enforcement. So we call upon government that in the allocation of resources in the coming financial year, the environment offices and natural resources offices should be considered for additional funding. But two, we call on government to help us implement these policies that mitigate and control environmental degradation in a very effective way and not to implement these laws selectively. The people degrading the environment in this country mainly are not the ordinary people and the peasants in the countryside. They are the well-placed people and the affluent of society. And therefore, if we are to get rid of this vice, we must implement the law to the letter without implementing it in a selective way. Honorable Chair, under the partial development model, the readiness of the political leaders fully support the effective implementation of monitoring of the PDM needs to be given top priority in the next financial year for effective and efficient realization of the program objectives. We also commit, under your continued guidance and support, to fully utilize effectively and efficiently the resources allocated for PDM to the effective realization of its objectives in our local governments. We regret what Dr. Arthur has just mentioned, where people turned PDM money into a party in a few local governments. We regret and condemn that. We hope that in the coming, this financial and the coming financial year, we pledge that we are going to improve on this, and those who are involved, they know the law is taking its course. ULGA calls upon government to create a balanced approach in budget allocation to Uganda Road Fund to facilitate adequate budget allocation to local government infrastructure on road maintenance, construction of bridges, and emergencies. This will enable local government to handle natural resources, natural disasters, like floods that often happen in districts like Kasese, Bundibujo, Bududa, and Imbali recently, among others. And also bearing in mind that works and transport contributes greatly to boosting socio-economic transformation in the local governments and the country at large. The procurement of the road equipment for both districts and municipalities, as well as cities that did not receive, should be a top priority in the budget 23-24. Right Honorable Prime Minister, you are aware 10 cities were created in this country, and a few other administrative units were created at district level, but they don't have a functional road unit. and this makes it quite difficult for them to work on their roads. But also the money and the resources that are allocated to local governments to do their road works leaves a lot to be desired. Honorable Prime Minister, we call for the standardization of the prices allocated to road works. When you look at the project implemented by the central government, a kilometer is given about between 40 to 60 million, just a kilometer depending on the terrain. But you look at a sub-county receiving 6 to 10 million as money meant to work on roads for a whole financial year. It creates a very big disparity which we think should be addressed so that we are able to implement on this core mandate of creating access to the market areas and market centers, as well as access of other services to our people by giving them passable road works that are all-weather roads. The alignment of the district development plans and budgeting to NDP 3 program planning approach to date remains a critical challenge to our local governments, and yet the medium-term expenditure framework is being revised and indicative planning figures will be issued at a program ceiling level. It is our request and recommendation, Right Honorable, to the National Planning Authority to expedite, support local governments to ensure compliance with program-based budgeting approach so as to facilitate timely and effective implementation of all programs and projects in the local governments. The financing of local governments, Right Honorable Prime Minister, remains unstable, and it is a big challenge to us. For long-term service delivery and local development, since the national budget has continued to erode gradually, with wage dominating the local government budget. By way of example, the National Budget Framework paper for the financial 22-23 allocation to local government indicated 4.01 trillion, which is over 50% less than what is required to deliver on our respective mandates. The analysis of the local government budget allocation further indicated that the wage allocation of this constituted 6.14%, leaving only 60.14%, leaving only 36.26% for actual development projects in the whole country. It is our recommendation, therefore, that the government allocates funds that are commensurate to the devolved local mandates and also redirect over 3 trillion, which is retained in MDAs, to local government votes for decentralized services and local development. Right Honorable, a lot of money that is meant to implement in local government is retained by the ministries, departments, and agencies, either as money meant for monitoring, and some of the projects are directly handled by the central government. As local governments, we feel this is unfair. We feel it undermines the spirit of devolution and decentralization in this country, and we think this money should be routed to the local governments to enable us implement on our mandate fully. On this allocation, Right Honorable Prime Minister, we note that over 82% of service delivery in this country is done at local governments, and yet we receive a miserable percentage of the national budget allocation to our local governments. Our demand, therefore, is that these monies that are kept in the ministries, departments, and agencies should be sent to the local governments that are charged with the mandate of giving the much desired services to our people. The reason for which we exist as local government in this country is none other than service delivery. And therefore, when we are unable to deliver on the much needed services to our people, Right Honorable, we become irrelevant. We therefore feel that what is meant for us should be sent to us and be given an opportunity and be tested on whether we shall not implement according to our plans. The capacity of local government in identifying alternative revenue sources as per Section 80, subsection 2 of the Local Government Act needs to be prioritized. This includes reforms that require local government to remit the local revenue collection to the single treasury account, and similarly, Parliament needs to review the PFMA Act of 2015. This has left local government fiscal autonomy usurped by the Minister of Finance, and this undermines planning at local government level, because determining planning guidelines and ceilings for local governments is done at the center, yet it should be a decentralization agenda. Local governments in this country are supposed to generate local needs against which budget ceilings are set. Honorable Chair, Uganda Local Government Association calls upon Parliament to enact a local government financing law to operationalize and protect the share allocation for local governments as provided for in the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda under the 7th schedule, and also operationalize Articles 11, 176D, 189, 190, 193, and 95, which have been abandoned for a while. Hence, local governments struggling with financing of their respective mandate. Minister of Finance should work with the Minister of Local Government to increase the budget allocation for discretionary development equalization grant, and with no conditions attached, to enable local governments allocate and utilize the funds to priorities local governments feel are important within their mandate and consistent with the national policies. In order to improve local government financing, there is need to restore the equalization grant to fulfill the constitutional obligation of government as provided for under Article 193(4) of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Right Honorable, support local government to develop and implement their own context-specific local economic development strategies to enable them to attract investors in projects that boost local economic development, thus generating their own resource revenue to enhance service delivery to the people and make them less reliant on central government for their sustenance. The Office of the District Commercial Officers needs to be strengthened, retooled, and reoriented on the activities towards the implementation of lead policy, and similarly, a tourism grant should be allocated to local governments, including retooling the Office of the Tourism Officers to facilitate the promotion of local and community tourism for local revenue generation to the delivery of services to the people. We request for a special grant, development grant, to fully operationalize the new administrative units, especially the newly created cities, town councils, sub-counties, for improved service delivery. We appreciate the government for operationalizing, through the Ministry of Local Government, over 726 newly created administrative units, but the newly created cities have not yet been given full support in terms of resource envelope to support development that matches with their mandate as urban authorities in this country. We therefore call for support to the newly created cities and the other administrative units. We call for the induction of political councillors and other political leaders. This sharing of the PDM money is testimony that some leaders need to be inducted. They need to go through orientation. We are going into the half of their term of office without being inducted. We pray that in the coming financial year, resources are set aside to have these new office bearers, the political office bearers, inducted, so that they are able to follow the government laws, they are able to interpret and give the services basing on the laws of the country. We call for retooling of both political and technical personnel Right Honorable Prime Minister, the district chairpersons in this country are using cars that were given to them 8 years ago. Most of them are in a dangerous mechanical condition and need to be replaced. In this current financial year, there was an attempt to itemize this activity, but later it was placed under unfunded priorities. We pray that this is considered very strongly in the coming financial year to enable local government leaders at the level of district chairpersons, speakers, chief administrative officers, sub-county chiefs, and the LC3s have been supported to monitor and fulfill their oversight role. Right Honorable, the remuneration of both political and technical personnel in local government remains a big challenge. We appreciate government for supporting the scientists by enhancing their salaries, but we note the disparity that has come along with this and the demotivation. We want to request government that in the coming financial year, we consider enhancement of salaries across the political and technical divide so that we all read from the same script as we continue to serve this country. I don't want to be pushed into the unexpected situation of the industrial action in local government. We believe in engagement, we believe in harmony, but we call for government to give us an ear as local government leaders in as far as remuneration is concerned. I must congratulate you, Right Honorable, that Cabinet last week did note something about an improved salary structure, but we want it concretized and we want it to appear in the next year's budget. I have heard the Honorable Minister of Finance saying that the budget strategy is not different from the current budget. And that one sends shockwaves into most of the people in this country who had picked good news that Cabinet did mention about enhancement of salaries come next financial year. So as political leaders in this country, we don't wish to join the teams that go for industrial action or call for industrial action. We believe in reasonable engagement that gives us results. And I believe, Right Honorable, this is within your calling as chair of this conference. As I conclude, Honorable Prime Minister, I want to make another comment on implementation of U-Gift. The Honorable Minister of Finance only talked about water, but he did not talk about education and health. Right Honorable Prime Minister, this country gets huge loans to improve on the quality of service delivery in this country. More importantly, under the U-Gift arrangement, intergovernmental fiscal transfer, we are supporting the water sector in this country, the health sector in this country, and the education sector. We have a challenge, Right Honorable, that as NRM, we did pledge to the people of this country that we are going to elevate all health center to health center 3s, that we are going to construct seed secondary schools in sub-counties that do not have. I want to report to you, Right Honorable, that from 2020 budget to date, local governments in this country have been receiving resources in their budgets to finance construction of seed secondary schools. This money comes, but under the hybrid procurement, where the central government is supposed to get contractors through a hybrid arrangement and send them to local governments, we have not been able to lay even a foundation for one seed secondary school since 2020. Money comes to the local governments, we wait to get a contractor who never appears, we send the money back. And what is the explanation? Local governments lack a capacity to absorb. It is an insult. The money comes in our budgets, we see the figures, we plan, even we get the sites and the sub-counties what put the seed secondary schools, but we don't get a contractor. And there is a clear instruction, don't dare get a contractor without approval from the mother ministries. The same thing with health. Money comes. 2 years, the contractor will appear in May, yet we are closing the financial in June. Money goes back. It is money that is borrowed. It is accumulating interest, but the services are not delivered. I pray that we have this U-Gift fully decentralized. Every local government has a public disposal unit to handle issues of procurement. Test us on this, Right Honorable. And school facilities grant and the PhD development, we have not been found in error. We cannot therefore fail to handle U-Gift. 3 years down the road, no business in districts, yet money comes and goes back. The voters say you are unable to absorb the money, you are not capable, and yet there is a roadblock somewhere. Address this roadblock, Right Honorable, we shall be good to move and implement the U-Gift program. As I conclude, allow me once again thank you for having invited Olga to voice the local governments of Uganda concerns this National Budget Conference and to make our input to the budget strategy for the financial 23-24. And we pray that our issues are given due consideration for improved service delivery in local governments in this country. We commit to embark on a journey of rebranding our local governments as centers of excellence, service provision, through improving on transparency and accountability, guided by the existing legal provisions and systems in place. I also call upon all local government leaders invited for the forthcoming regional budget consultative workshops to fully participate and continue to bring out issues that affect service delivery, to inform the budgeting process for the good of the people that we serve. We appreciate the support to SAGE, the elderly grant. The 25,000 has been coming, Right Honorable Prime Minister. We pray that this one improves at least 50,000, given the cost of living today, from 25,000 per month to 50,000 per month. And among the people we consider supporting, I pray that we don't leave behind our LOC ones and the village health teams whom the Minister of Finance did talk about in his presentation. Right Honorable Prime Minister and members, I beg to submit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, our brother, the LC5 Kawarole, Richard Rwabuhinga, for your presentation. Honorable members and colleagues, we now come to the end of our presentations. We now go to item number 13, that is the plenary. We shall be identifying those who are going to speak. We want this activity to last for only 30 minutes. We give them, where do we start from? We start from this side. Give him a microphone, then 2, 3, and that side is now covered. Then I will go here. I would encourage others to write. You can write to the Ministry of Finance. They will take care of your issues. And also plead that if you're given an opportunity, you don't take a lot of time.
Thank you.